Imagine this for a moment. Out of the endless stream of noise, distractions, random videos, and forgettable messages, somehow, you found this. And deep down, something inside you already knows that means more than coincidence. It means recognition. Because only certain people arrive at messages like this at the exact moment they're ready to hear them. The universe has a strange way of placing the right signal directly in front of you when your awareness is finally prepared to receive it. And maybe that's why you're here now. Maybe something inside you just activated, something that has been waiting for this exact moment for a very long time. There's been a pattern running quietly through your life, hasn't there? A signal you could never fully explain. Those synchronicities that felt too precise to dismiss. Those strange moments where time itself seemed to slow down for a second, where reality bent just enough for you to notice that something deeper was happening beneath the surface. You felt it before. The feeling that certain moments carried an unusual weight. Like life was trying to communicate with you through symbols, timing, encounters, emotions, or sudden realizations. And that isn't random. It's selection. But not selection in the way most people think. This process is consciousness recognizing itself across different dimensions of possibility. Every time you suddenly stopped in the middle of an ordinary moment because something around you felt strangely meaningful. Every time the world briefly revealed something extraordinary hiding beneath the surface of normal life. You were receiving confirmation that your awareness was beginning to operate on a different wavelength from consensus reality. And this didn't happen overnight. This sensitivity has been building for years, quietly refining itself through every challenge you survived, every doubt you overcame, every moment you chose to trust something deeper than what your physical senses could prove. Your ability to perceive beyond appearances has been expanding little by little. And now you're approaching a threshold where that expansion is about to accelerate faster than ever before. That's why certain messages seem to find you while other people scroll right past them without feeling anything. Your consciousness has become magnetized toward a very specific kind of information. Not distraction, not empty entertainment, not meaningless noise, but activation, reminders, signals designed to wake up the part of you buried beneath years of conditioning that taught you to think small, doubt your instincts, and dismiss the extraordinary as impossible. Without fully realizing it, you've been existing between multiple realities at the same time. One reality is the version most people accept without question, the world of limitation, scarcity, struggle, slow change, and rare miracles. But then there's the other reality, the one you've been catching glimpses of your entire life. The reality where intention changes outcomes, where consciousness shapes matter, where what you deeply expect begins organizing itself into your external experience. Most people never move beyond the first reality because they believe the second one is fantasy. But you've already crossed between them more times than you know. Sometimes consciously, sometimes unconsciously. You've had moments where the impossible became possible so clearly that you couldn't deny what happened, followed by moments where you questioned whether you imagined the entire thing. But this isn't instability. This is calibration. You're learning how to navigate between different layers of consciousness. And recently, you've probably felt the pressure increasing. That strange internal expansion. Like something inside you is outgrowing the boundaries of the person you used to be. It feels uncomfortable because transformation always does. The old identity is dissolving while the new one hasn't fully formed yet. And the space between those two versions of yourself can feel chaotic. But here's what almost nobody explains. That chaos is actually coherence reorganizing itself at a higher level. Think about water becoming steam. For one brief moment, it's neither fully liquid nor fully gas. It enters a transitional state that no longer fits the old definition, but hasn't completely stabilized into the new form yet. That's exactly where you are now. You're standing inside a quantum transition zone where your old operating system is being upgraded to run entirely new levels of awareness that your previous identity could never sustain. And this transition isn't random. Your higher self, the version of you that exists outside linear time and can already see the full trajectory of your evolution, has been quietly arranging this process all along. That version of you has been placing the exact challenges, opportunities, disappointments, synchronicities, and wake-up calls into your reality to prepare you for this moment. the moment where everything begins shifting into a completely different gear. The pressure you've been feeling isn't pressure to become someone else. It's pressure to stop pretending to be someone you were never meant to be. It's the authentic version of you demanding to finally be expressed, demanding to be lived, demanding to fully exist without apology, compromise, or fear. And that pressure will continue intensifying until you stop resisting the transformation and start cooperating with it. Every spiritual tradition throughout human history has tried to describe this same process using different language. But all of them point toward the same realization. The moment human consciousness recognizes itself as something far greater than the limited identity it once believed itself to be. When this recognition stops being just an idea in your mind and starts becoming something your entire body understands, everything changes. Not because the universe suddenly begins treating you differently, but because you finally begin responding to life as the creative force you've always been. The setbacks you once interpreted as failures were never punishment. They were course corrections. The opportunities that disappeared weren't losses. They were protection from realities that were never truly aligned with who you were becoming. Even the moments that looked completely wrong were unfolding perfectly according to a timeline your limited perspective couldn't yet understand. The delays were not punishment. They were preparation. The waiting was not wasted time. It was integration. Time. But let's go deeper into what this preparation was really doing to you, because it's far more sophisticated than most people realize. Every experience you've lived through, including the ones you wish you could forget, has been expanding your capacity to hold higher states of awareness. The heartbreak taught you how to keep your heart open even when it hurt. The failures taught you that your value could not be measured by external outcomes. The betrayals forced you to trust your inner knowing more than the voices around you. Every challenge activated dormant parts of your consciousness that could never have awakened any other way. And every version of you that emerged from difficulty became more expanded, more resilient, more capable than the version that entered it. This isn't just emotional growth. This is consciousness evolution. You've been systematically increasing your ability to hold more light, more love, more truth, more personal power without collapsing under the intensity of it. Nothing was wasted. Every moment of confusion increased your tolerance for uncertainty. Every season of isolation strengthened your ability to remain connected to yourself when nobody else could understand what you were going through. Every time you were forced to find strength you didn't know you had, you discovered inner resources existing beyond your personality, beyond your history, beyond every limitation you once believed defined human potential. And now, you're standing at the edge of an entirely different reality. But this reality asks something very specific from you. Not hope, not wishful thinking, not passive faith. It asks for embodied certainty, the kind of knowing that moves through your cells, that changes the way you breathe, the way you walk into rooms, the way you speak to yourself when nobody else is listening. And here's the strange part. This certainty is not something you create. It's something you remember. It's the same certainty you had as a child when imagination felt completely real. Before the world taught you to separate real from impossible, you lived in a state of pure possibility where anything could happen, and often did. That state was never childish. It was quantum. Children naturally understand something most adults forget. Consciousness comes first, and physical reality comes second. They haven't yet been trained to believe that only what the eyes can see is real. They still trust intuition. They still trust imagination. They still trust the invisible intelligence moving through life itself. Recovering this quantum consciousness doesn't mean regressing into childish thinking. It means evolving into a higher form of perception that includes logic, but moves beyond the limits of purely linear thought. It means remembering that you are not separate from the same intelligence that creates galaxies, moves planets through space, and orchestrates the impossible timing of synchronicities throughout your life. And the future version of you, the version already living in abundance, peace, confidence, freedom, clarity, is not waiting somewhere far away for you to eventually become them. They already exist now within the quantum field of infinite possibilities, constantly broadcasting their signal toward you. Your job is not to force yourself into becoming that version. Your job is to tune in, to align with their vibrations so deeply that the gap between who you are now and who you are becoming begins dissolving completely. This is not fantasy or metaphysical pretending. This mirrors one of the deepest principles inside quantum mechanics itself. In quantum physics, particles exist in multiple possible states simultaneously until observation collapses those possibilities into one measurable reality. Your consciousness functions as that observer. Your focused attention is the force collapsing infinite potential into lived experience. The version of yourself you consistently observe becomes the version reality reflects back to you. If you repeatedly see yourself as powerless, disconnected, limited, life mirrors limitation. But when you begin observing yourself as peaceful, abundant, powerful, aligned, reality reorganizes around that observation because consciousness itself participates in shaping experience. But here's where it becomes even more profound. Your future self is not just passively broadcasting signals toward you. They are actively collaborating with you across time. Every inspired idea that suddenly enters your mind, every unexpected wave of motivation, every thought that feels larger than your current reality, may actually be information transmitted from the future version of you who already walked through this transformation successfully. This is not science fiction. This is how consciousness behaves once you move beyond the illusion of linear time. Your future self already sees the path your present self cannot yet fully recognize. They know which choices accelerate your evolution and which ones delay it. They know which people matter, which opportunities carry significance, and which doors are meant to stay closed. They are constantly sending signals toward you, but you must operate at the right frequency to recognize them clearly. And this changes everything because what you desire is not separated from you by time, distance, or circumstance. It is separated only by frequency. And frequency can change in a single moment without altering anything external first. It begins with one realization powerful enough to reshape your entire perception of reality. What you want wants you back. The life you've been imagining has also been moving toward you. The future you keep calling toward yourself has been calling you forward at the same time. Because consciousness is not confined to the brain or the body. Consciousness is a field permeating all existence. And individual awareness works like a radio receiver tuning into different layers within that field. When you deeply desire something, you are not inventing it from nothing. You are resonating with a reality where that possibility already exists. Your desire itself is proof that you carry the ability to tune into that frequency. Otherwise, you would never have been able to perceive it at all. When you desire something deeply, you're not randomly inventing fantasy inside your mind. You are resonating with a reality where that possibility already exists. Your desire itself is proof that you carry the capacity to tune into that reality. Otherwise, you would never have been able to perceive it in the first place. But most people misunderstand desire completely. They treat it like something distant they must somehow pull toward themselves through struggle, effort, sacrifice, or endless waiting. They believe they must work hard enough, prove themselves worthy enough, become impressive enough, spiritual enough, disciplined enough, before life finally allows them to receive what they want. And without realizing it, this creates resistance because the entire approach is built on the illusion of separation. It assumes that you and the reality you desire exist in two different places, and somehow a bridge must be built between them. But the deeper quantum understanding is entirely different. You and what you desire already exist inside the same field of consciousness. You are not trying to attract it from far away. You are trying to align with it. You are not trying to force reality into existence. You are allowing yourself to recognize what has already existed in potential form all along. The difference sounds subtle, but it changes everything. Attraction implies distance, effort, chasing. Alignment implies resonance, recognition, remembrance. And when you finally align with the frequency of what you desire, something extraordinary happens. You realize the connection was already there from the beginning. The separation was only created by focusing on the wrong signal. It's like trying desperately to hear a song while your radio has been tuned to static the entire time. The music never disappeared. You simply weren't tuned to the right station yet. And this is why manifestation sometimes happens with shocking speed. Not because the universe suddenly rushed to build a new reality for you overnight, but because you suddenly aligned with realities that were already available inside the quantum field of possibilities. The speed of manifestation is directly connected to the speed of alignment. And alignment itself can happen instantly the moment you fully understand what's really happening. But this is also where most people become trapped. They think they must earn their dreams, prove they deserve them, wait until the right time, build enough credibility, enough healing, enough perfection. They approach their own future like someone nervously applying for a position they're afraid they might never get. But what if the reason you can imagine your future so clearly, feel it emotionally, almost taste it sometimes, is because it already belongs to you? What if your ability to conceive it is itself evidence that it already exists inside what could be called your quantum inheritance? This idea is crucial to understand. You did not randomly develop the ability to imagine certain realities with such clarity. Your imagination is not a fantasy machine. It is a perception organ capable of sensing across dimensions of possibility. When you imagine something with emotional resonance and vivid clarity, you are not inventing fiction. You are tuning into a potential reality that already exists. Think about where imagination actually comes from. Where do visions originate? Where do ideas arrive from? You cannot fully trace them back to one single location in the brain or one isolated memory from the past. Often they arrive as though something beyond your current personality transmitted them into awareness. And maybe that's exactly what's happening. Imagination may be the mechanism through which higher dimensional information translates itself into forms your current consciousness can process. Every great invention, every revolutionary breakthrough, every impossible achievement in human history began as imagination first. But here's the fascinating part. Multiple people often receive the same impossible idea around the exact same time, even when they have never met each other. That isn't coincidence. That is consciousness evolution expressing itself through multiple receivers simultaneously. Which means your visions, dreams, intuitions, and inner callings are not random fantasies appearing from nowhere. They may actually be previews, signals, downloads, showing you realities already prepared within the quantum field, waiting for you to align deeply enough to collapse them into lived experience. And the feeling that you are somehow unworthy of your dreams? That is not truth. That is old programming inherited from systems built on scarcity, competition, comparison, and external authority. In the quantum paradigm, worthiness is not something you achieve after enough suffering or effort. Worthiness is something you already are. Your existence itself is proof that you are worthy of expansion, worthy of beauty, worthy of abundance, worthy of experiences beyond what your conditioned mind was trained to expect. You are not asking for too much when you imagine a larger life. You are not unrealistic for expecting miracles. You are not delusional for feeling that somehow, despite everything, life is still working in your favor. You are simply aligning with a level of truth your conditioned mind was trained to doubt, but your deeper consciousness recognizes immediately. And let's be honest, you've been through the fire recently, haven't you? The pressure, the uncertainty, the nights where you questioned everything you thought you knew about yourself. The moments where other people dismissed you, overlooked you, or made you feel like your dreams were too big, too unrealistic, too far away. But every moment of that struggle was forging something inside you that cannot be broken anymore. You have been inside what could only be described as a cosmic gymnasium, building spiritual strength you didn't even know you would need. But let's talk honestly about what was really happening during those difficult seasons. It was never random suffering. It was systematic preparation. Every challenge was precisely calibrated to activate parts of your consciousness required for the reality you are now moving toward. The struggles were not punishment. They were initiation. Think about the transformation of a caterpillar inside a chrysalis. From the outside, it appears as though the old form is dissolving, collapsing, disappearing completely. But beneath the surface, a total reorganization is taking place. Matter itself restructures into a form capable of entirely new possibilities. The crawling consciousness of the caterpillar transforms into the flying consciousness of the butterfly. This is not ordinary growth. This is metamorphosis. And that is exactly what has been happening to you. The version of you built around limitation, exhaustion, fear, survival, and small rewards has been dissolving so an entirely different level of consciousness could emerge in its place. And this transformation doesn't stop at the level of thought. Eventually, It begins changing the entire architecture of how you experience reality itself. Because once the old identity starts dissolving, the systems built around that identity can no longer operate the same way they once did. The habits that once felt comfortable begin feeling empty. The goals that used to motivate you suddenly lose emotional charge. The conversations that once entertained you begin sounding repetitive, shallow, disconnected from something real. And for a while, this stage can feel terrifying because it looks like you are losing yourself. But what's actually happening is something far more important. You are outgrowing the version of reality built around survival consciousness. The personality constructed around limitation, struggle, fear, validation, and small rewards is beginning to collapse because your awareness can no longer fully fit inside it. And this is why many people experience deep isolation during awakening. Not because they are being punished, not because something is wrong with them, but because their internal frequency is no longer compatible with environments, relationships, conversations, and identities built on old patterns of consciousness. Sometimes people drift away quietly. Sometimes entire relationships dissolve without dramatic conflict. Sometimes you walk into rooms that once felt familiar and suddenly feel like a stranger there. This is frequency differentiation. Your nervous system begins rejecting realities that no longer match who you are becoming. And while this can feel painful, it is actually evidence of expansion. Because the connections entering your life now will be built differently. They will not be based only on comfort, distraction, trauma bonding, or unconscious survival patterns. They will be built on resonance, mutual growth, emotional truth, shared evolution, and deeper alignment. But the shift goes even deeper than relationships. Your actual perception of reality begins changing. You start noticing patterns that other people miss entirely. You sense emotional undercurrents before words are spoken. You intuitively know when something is aligned or misaligned long before logic can explain why. Situations that once triggered intense reactions suddenly lose their power over you. Opinions that once controlled your self-worth begin sounding distant and insignificant. And slowly, almost without realizing it, your attention itself becomes creative force. Your expectation becomes a magnetic field shaping what you notice, what you allow, and what you unconsciously move toward. This is why consciousness work is never only inside your head. The observer changes the observed. Your internal state changes the probabilities you collapse into lived experience. And eventually you stop trying to force reality because you realize your presence itself influences outcomes more powerfully than endless effort ever could. But here's where many people become afraid. Because the moment you stop depending on external validation, the entire structure of your life begins reorganizing itself. You stop asking permission to become who you already feel yourself becoming. You stop shrinking your dreams to make other people comfortable. You stop waiting for proof before trusting your intuition. And for people still operating inside old paradigms of fear and limitation, this version of you can feel threatening because your transformation silently challenges everything they still believe about reality. But this is not arrogance. This is remembrance. There is a part of you that has always known you were meant for more than survival, more than repetition, more than emotional exhaustion disguised as normal life. There is a deeper intelligence inside you that already recognizes your potential long before your rational mind catches up to it. And that deeper intelligence does not require perfect conditions to move forward. It does not wait for certainty from the outside world. It already knows. It moves from inner recognition instead of external approval. This is why intuition becomes more important than logic during this stage of transformation. Logic is useful, but logic is limited to known information from the past. Intuition operates differently. Intuition perceives movement before physical evidence fully forms. It senses trajectories, possibilities, emotional truths, hidden coherence. The rational mind analyzes what already happened. Higher awareness feels what is trying to emerge next. And every time you trust that deeper knowing instead of collapsing back into fear, you accelerate your alignment with the reality already calling you forward. This doesn't mean abandoning intelligence or becoming disconnected from reality. It means expanding perception beyond purely linear thinking. The mind alone cannot navigate multidimensional transformation because the mind is designed primarily for prediction and survival. But the deeper consciousness within you is designed for evolution. And evolution often feels irrational before it becomes obvious. Think about every major turning point in your life. Before the external evidence appeared, there was usually a feeling first. A pull, a knowing, a subtle inner movement that logic could not fully explain at the time. Sometimes it arrived as excitement, sometimes discomfort, sometimes restlessness, sometimes an almost electric certainty that something was about to change even if nothing visible had changed yet. That is how higher intelligence communicates. Not always through words. Often through sensation, emotional resonance, sudden clarity, synchronicity, instinctive direction. And the more you trust those signals, the stronger they become. Because consciousness strengthens through use. Most people override intuition so often that eventually they lose sensitivity to it completely. But you are beginning to recover that connection now. You are learning to recognize the difference between fear and guidance. Fear contracts. Guidance expands. Fear creates confusion and urgency. Guidance creates clarity even when the future remains uncertain. Fear demands guarantees before movement. Guidance simply says, this way. And once you begin following that deeper inner movement consistently, life itself starts reorganizing around your decisions in ways that seem almost impossible to explain. Logically, because reality responds differently when your thoughts, emotions, actions, and deeper consciousness stop moving in opposite directions and begin moving together as one coherent signal. And maybe the deepest shift happening inside you right now has nothing to do with becoming successful in the way the world taught you to define success. Maybe the real transformation is that you are slowly becoming someone who no longer needs external circumstances to confirm your worth before allowing yourself to feel whole. Because for most of your life, your identity was probably tied to outcomes, to achievement, to validation, to being chosen, to proving yourself valuable enough to deserve love, recognition, security, or belonging. But the more consciousness expands, the more exhausting that old survival mechanism becomes. Eventually, you realize you can spend your entire life chasing evidence that you matter and still never feel complete. Because no external achievement can permanently stabilize an internal state built on self-doubt. And this is why so many people achieve what they once dreamed about only to discover the emptiness followed them there. The relationship appears. The money appears. The success appears. The recognition appears. But the nervous system still carries the same unconscious fear, the same scarcity, the same emotional instability underneath it all. Which means the external reality changes while the internal experience remains trapped in the same frequency. That's why real transformation begins the moment you stop trying to become worthy and begin recognizing that worth was never absent in the first place. You stop asking the world to tell you who you are. You stop treating your dreams like impossible fantasies that require permission from reality before you can trust them. You stop waiting for external conditions to align before allowing yourself to embody the version of you that already exists internally. And strangely enough, the moment this happens, life itself begins responding differently. Not because you manipulated the universe, but because you stopped broadcasting contradiction. Most people live with their thoughts, emotions, actions, and deeper desires all moving in opposite directions. One part of them wants expansion while another part fears it. One part asks for love while another part expects abandonment. One part desires abundance while another secretly believes they are safer in limitation because limitation feels familiar. And this internal conflict weakens manifestation because the signal being transmitted is fragmented. But coherence changes everything. Coherence is when your thoughts, emotions, body, and deeper consciousness all move together toward the same reality without contradiction. It is the moment your inner world stops fighting itself. And according to both neuroscience and quantum theory, coherent systems become exponentially more powerful than fragmented systems. Think about a laser. Ordinary light scatters in multiple directions with limited impact. But when light waves move together in perfect coherence, they become concentrated enough to cut through steel. Human consciousness operates similarly. Scattered awareness creates scattered outcomes. Coherent awareness creates measurable transformation. And once you understand this, you stop obsessing over techniques and begin focusing on alignment itself. You realize manifestation was never about forcing reality through endless repetition. It was about removing the internal contradiction, preventing reality from reorganizing naturally around your deeper state of being. This is why some people can repeat affirmations for years with almost no change, while others experience profound shifts from a single moment of genuine realization. The power was never in the words alone. The power was always in the level of internal coherence behind them. Your body knows when you are speaking truth and when you are merely performing hope. Your nervous system can detect the difference between embodied certainty and desperate compensation, and the universe responds differently to each. This is why emotional authenticity matters more than perfect positivity. You do not need to force yourself into artificial optimism to transform your life. You need honesty. You need awareness. You need the courage to stop lying to yourself about what you truly feel, fear, desire, and know. Because suppressed truth continues broadcasting beneath conscious thought whether you acknowledge it or not. And once you stop suppressing those deeper layers, something remarkable happens. The fragmentation begins dissolving. You stop leaking energy into inner resistance. Your attention becomes cleaner. Your intuition becomes stronger. Your decisions become simpler. Life stops feeling like endless force and starts feeling more like intelligent flow. This doesn't mean challenges disappear. It means your relationship to them changes completely. You stop interpreting every obstacle as evidence that you are failing. Instead, you begin recognizing resistance as feedback, redirection, refinement. You understand that reality is not attacking you. It is responding to you. And the more coherent your internal state becomes, the more reality begins mirroring that coherence externally through opportunities, synchronicities, relationships, timing, and seemingly impossible alignments. But there's another level to this most people never realize. Coherence is contagious. Human beings constantly influence each other beneath the level of conscious awareness. Emotional states spread, beliefs spread, nervous systems synchronize. Entire groups unconsciously organize around dominant frequencies. This is why one deeply coherent person can shift the emotional atmosphere of an entire room without saying very much at all. Their presence itself becomes transmission. Their nervous system broadcasts safety, clarity, groundedness, possibility. And other people begin responding to that signal automatically. This is also why humanity itself appears to be entering a period of massive instability right now. Old systems built on fear, scarcity, separation, and control are becoming increasingly incoherent. The structures no longer match the level of consciousness emerging within millions of people around the world. And whenever old paradigms collapse, chaos appears before reorganization. But beneath the surface of that chaos, a different pattern is forming. More people are beginning to question inherited beliefs. More people are waking up to the realization that they are not powerless observers trapped inside a fixed reality. They are participants within a living field of consciousness constantly responding to perception, emotion, intention, and collective focus. Which means your personal transformation is never only personal. Every time you become more coherent internally, you contribute to the larger reorganization happening collectively. Every moment you choose awareness instead of unconscious reaction, compassion instead of fear, alignment instead of fragmentation, you strengthen the larger field humanity itself is evolving toward. And maybe this is why you've always felt different. Why certain conversations felt empty to you long before you could explain why. Why some part of you always sensed there had to be more to reality than the version presented by society. You were not imagining that feeling. You were sensing the future before the external world fully reflected it yet. You were already tuning into the next level of consciousness, trying to emerge through humanity itself. And this is where the final shift begins. Because eventually you realize coherence is not something you perform for a few minutes during meditation before returning to fear for the rest of the day. Coherence becomes the way you live, the way you breathe, the way you move through ordinary moments when nobody is watching. It becomes the silent relationship between your inner world and every choice you make. And once this happens, manifestation stops feeling like a technique and starts feeling like a natural consequence of who you have become. You no longer wake up obsessing over signs, timelines, or whether reality is working yet. You stop chasing synchronicities because your entire life begins moving in synchronicity. You stop trying to force outcomes because the need to control every possibility slowly dissolves. And in its place, something far more stable emerges: trust. Not passive waiting, not blind optimism. A grounded certainty that life is responding to you in ways your logical mind cannot always measure immediately. This is the stage where your nervous system finally stops living in constant anticipation of disappointment. 4 years, maybe even decades, part of you unconsciously expected things to fall apart. Expected rejection, expected loss, expected failure hiding behind every opportunity. And because consciousness organizes perception, you often noticed evidence confirming those fears far more quickly than evidence contradicting them. But coherence changes perception itself. You begin preparing for success instead of emotionally rehearsing disaster. You start speaking to yourself like someone worthy of respect instead of someone permanently trying to recover from the past. You begin making decisions from where you are going instead of from where you were wounded. And these subtle shifts completely alter the signal you transmit into reality every single day. Because the universe is not merely responding to isolated thoughts. It responds to dominant patterns of consciousness repeated through emotion, expectation, embodiment, attention, and belief over time. Every thought becomes transmission. Every emotion becomes instruction. Every action becomes a vote for the reality you continue strengthening. And when those patterns finally become coherent, reality begins reorganizing with astonishing precision. Opportunities arrive at strange, perfect moments. Conversations happen that redirect entire timelines. People appear carrying exactly the insight, support, or connection you needed. Doors open where logic predicted obstacles. And often it feels almost supernatural, until you realize you are finally witnessing what happens when internal contradiction disappears. But here's the part most people still miss. Coherence cannot be faked. You cannot manipulate reality by pretending to believe something your nervous system fundamentally rejects. The body always knows. Your deeper consciousness always knows. You can repeat affirmations endlessly while secretly expecting failure underneath them, and reality will continue responding primarily to the deeper expectation. This is why authentic transformation requires radical honesty. Not forced positivity, not spiritual performance, not bypassing grief, fear, anger, or uncertainty. Real coherence emerges when every layer of you gradually comes into alignment with what you already know to be true at the deepest level. Sometimes that process includes facing uncomfortable emotions you spent years avoiding. Sometimes it means admitting that certain dreams were never truly yours, but inherited expectations from family, society, fear, or comparison. Sometimes it means releasing identities that once kept you safe, but now keep you small. And that release can feel terrifying because the ego interprets uncertainty as danger. But beneath that fear, another intelligence is emerging, one no longer organized around survival alone. This is why the path of awakening often feels like both death and rebirth happening simultaneously. One version of you is collapsing while another version is quietly stabilizing beneath the surface. And during that transition, there may be moments where you feel lost between realities. Moments where the old life no longer fits, but the new one has not fully materialized yet. But this in-between space is sacred, because it is where consciousness reorganizes itself into higher order. It is where the fragmented self slowly becomes whole again. And eventually, something remarkable begins happening. You stop searching for proof because your own internal state becomes the proof. You stop asking whether you are aligned because alignment becomes obvious in the way your body feels, the way your intuition responds, the way life flows around your decisions. You notice that the same situations which once drained you now affect you differently. The same fears that once controlled you no longer possess the same emotional authority. And instead of reacting automatically, you begin responding consciously. This is embodiment. This is what happens when awareness stops being intellectual and becomes integrated into your nervous system, your emotions, your behavior, your presence. And once enough people begin reaching this level of coherence individually, collective reality itself starts shifting. Because humanity is not separate individuals randomly existing beside each other. Humanity functions more like an interconnected field. Emotional states spread through populations. Belief systems shape civilizations. Fear creates systems of control. Coherence creates systems of evolution. And what we are witnessing in the world right now is the collision between collapsing paradigms and emerging consciousness. Old structures built on manipulation, separation, fear, scarcity, and external authority are becoming unstable because more people are beginning to perceive beyond them. More people are reclaiming inner authority. More people are realizing they are not powerless participants trapped inside fixed conditions. They are conscious contributors influencing reality through perception, emotion, focus, and embodied belief. And that realization changes everything. Because once enough human beings stop broadcasting survival consciousness and begin embodying coherence instead, the collective field itself becomes easier for others to access. Transformation accelerates socially the same way resonance amplifies sound waves. One coherent individual influences another. Then entire communities begin reorganizing around new possibilities. This is why your personal healing matters far more than you realize. Every time you choose awareness over unconscious reaction, compassion over fear, truth over performance, alignment over fragmentation, you contribute directly to the future humanity is moving toward. And maybe this is why you could never fully return to the old version of yourself, no matter how hard you tried. Some part of you already saw beyond it. Some part of you already felt the next level trying to emerge through your life. That restless feeling you carried for years was never random dissatisfaction. It was consciousness sensing a larger reality before your external circumstances reflected it yet. And now, you are finally beginning to live from that awareness instead of merely glimpsing it occasionally. So if you feel different lately, if old environments feel heavy, if old conversations feel empty, if your intuition feels louder than ever before, do not mistake that for disconnection. You are not falling apart. You are reorganizing. The future version of you has already begun stabilizing within your present awareness. And the more coherent you become internally, the more life will continue rearranging itself externally to reflect what you have already become within. And maybe this was never about becoming someone new. Maybe it was always about remembering who you were before fear taught you to shrink, before survival taught you to doubt yourself, before the world convinced you to disconnect from your own inner knowing. Because the truth is, your future self is no longer waiting somewhere far ahead of you. It's already bleeding into the present moment. Every instinct you can no longer ignore, every old pattern that suddenly feels unbearable, every quiet feeling pulling you towards something larger, is evidence that the transition has already begun. You are not disconnected from reality. You are disconnecting from lower versions of reality that no longer match your consciousness. And yes, that process can feel uncomfortable. It can feel lonely. It can feel like everything familiar is dissolving at once. But what feels like collapse is often reorganization at a higher level. Your nervous system is learning a new baseline. Your awareness is stabilizing into greater coherence. Your life is slowly rearranging itself around the person you are becoming internally. So stop asking whether you're too late. Stop wondering whether you missed your moment. You were never behind. The path was unfolding exactly in the order your consciousness needed to experience it. Every challenge refined you. Every disappointment redirected you. Every moment of uncertainty strengthened the version of you now emerging from beneath years of conditioning and limitation. And now, the next phase begins. Not forcing, not chasing, not begging reality to change, but living in alignment deeply enough that reality naturally begins responding to who you already are. So if this message found you at the exact moment you needed it, don't ignore that feeling. Something inside you recognized itself here. And maybe that recognition is the beginning of everything changing. If this resonated with you, leave a comment below and share what part of this journey you're experiencing right now. Like the video, subscribe, and join this growing community of people. Remembering that consciousness is far more powerful than we were taught to believe. Because the more coherent we become individually, the more reality itself begins transforming collectively. And until the next video, protect your mind, trust your intuition, and keep moving toward the version of yourself that already exists waiting beyond fear.